Do you ever find yourself looking back on your life and wondering how you could have ever allowed yourself to be so blindsided by everything that has transpired? That is exactly how I felt exactly 6 months ago. My name is Vicky, 26, and I can honestly say that I never imagined that I would be the girl who experienced the wild X trauma, but here we are. It was when my mother went on yet another one of her binges that everything got started, despite the fact that she has been addicted to medications for as long as I can remember. This particular instance was different. I returned home from my shift at Trendy Treasures to find her dozing off on the couch with a man I had never seen before. I was surprised to discover her presence. How much is my rent? Not found in the drawer of my dresser once more. I had reached my limit. Through tears, I contacted Brandon. Even though we had only been dating for about 3 months at that point, he was unlike any other person I had ever dated. He was secure, he had his own apartment, and he religiously played the video game world of Warcraft, which was actually rather endearing since he was so in love with it. That evening, he came to pick me up, and I can still vividly recall sitting in his car with a sad little backpack full of clothing, mascara all over my face, and wondering how my life had become so pitiful. Until you figure out what's going on, you are welcome to remain with me, he said. I was able to detect that he was not in a good mood about it. To this point, we hadn't even said, I love you. In any case, what options did I have? Can I sleep in my car? Do you go to a shelter? Oh, no, thank you. The first several weeks that I spent working at Brandon's were actually rather enjoyable. During the evenings, we would cuddle up together and watch movies. I would also cook for him and keep things tidy. On the other hand, Melanie, who is my manager at Trendy Treasures, began to get on my case about everything. Is it 3 minutes late? A written caution is issued. Would you like to take an additional 5 minutes off? It was her habit to stand there and tap her watch. The accusation that I had given my employee discount to a friend was the final straw that broke the camel's back. That is something that I did not do at all, by the way. One, immediately resigned from my position. My shift was in the midst when I abruptly left the building. That night, when Brandon returned home from the warehouse, I was so pleased with myself that I couldn't help but think, guess who went and kicked off their toxic boss today? Not to mention his face. The only thing he said was, so you don't have a job now? He didn't say anything. I was like, don't worry about it. I'll find something that is significantly better. That occurred 2 months ago. If you know what I mean, I'd applied to a few other places online, but nothing has really stood out to me. I can sense that Brandon is getting frustrated about having to pay all of the bills. Even though he hasn't directly expressed his frustration, it is not my fault. The current state of the employment market is quite difficult. In addition, I have been cooking and keeping the flat clean on a regular basis, so it's not like I'm just taking advantage of the situation. Things started to go strange the previous week. While we were both lying in bed, Brandon approached me and asked whether I would be interested in attending the business picnic that was going to take place this next weekend. When I said that I would be sure to do it, he gave me this look. My coworkers are looking forward to finally getting to know you. He stated that Kyle's girlfriend had mentioned that she had seen you in the mall the previous week, but that you were with another man. The pit of my stomach sank. I pretended that it was probably my cousin who was in town, but Brandon simply nodded and rolled over. I played it off as his coming to visit. Obviously, it was not my cousin who done it. It turned out to be Caleb, my former boyfriend. Okay, so he's kind of my ex. It's a difficult situation. When I first met Brandon, we were obviously on a break from each other, but we never officially ended our relationship. Unfortunately, I never got around to informing Caleb that it was a permanent change. There are times when he buys me things, and to tell you the truth, not having a job has been a welcome relief. Wouldn't it be better if Brandon didn't know whatever he didn't know? On the other hand, I am beginning to feel as like I am juggling an excessive number of secrets. Caleb has been sending me a never-ending stream of text, asking when he can visit me at my home. He is unaware that I am currently residing with Brandon. Brandon is unaware that I am still having a conversation with Caleb. I always keep my phone in the silent mode, and I always keep it facing down. One time, Brandon inquired about it, and I responded by yelling at him that I do not appreciate it when other people look through my notifications. He retreated, but I can tell that he is wary of what I am saying. It's just that I have a lot of affection for Brandon. I am pleased with him, unchanging. However, when compared to the roller coaster that is being with Caleb, this stability might at times feel dull and uninteresting. Every night, Brandon goes to bed at 10 o'clock so that he can wake up for his shift at 6 o'clock. Every night, Caleb and I would stay up until 3 in the morning and talk about life and the world. Brandon uses a spreadsheet to map out his financial plan. When Caleb was trying to surprise me with concert tickets, he once spent his entire paycheck on it. When I was out last night, Brandon inquired about my job search once more. I stated that I was scheduled to have an interview the next week. It's just to get him off my back that I don't do it. Because, to tell you the truth, Vicky, I had no intention of providing financial assistance to both of us when you moved in. He appeared relieved and remarked, "That's great." I gave a friendly grin and changed the subject, but on the inside I was anxious. What if he kicks me out before I finally figure out what's going on? It has been another 2 weeks of treading carefully around every corner. Brandon began making little tidbits of commentary regarding his bills and the fact that his grocery prices have increased by a factor of 2. The previous evening, he placed a job advertisement on the kitchen counter along with a post-it note that read, "I thought this might be of interest to both of you, as if I am unable to find work on my own." I disposed of it by throwing it away. The situation with Caleb is becoming ever more dire since he started messaging me at all hours of the night, asking what I'm doing and who I'm with. He has become extremely possessive. While I am with Brandon, I have been telling him that I am busy with family matters, and while I am with Caleb, I have been telling Brandon that I am looking for a job. Keeping the lies straight is becoming increasingly difficult. Yesterday, I came dangerously close to being caught. While I was in the bedroom talking to Caleb on the phone, Brandon arrived home from work quite early because he was suffering from a migraine. All I could do was pretend it was my mother and hung up as quickly as I could before I texted Caleb to let him know that my mother was experiencing a crisis. He attempted to call me back 8 times in a row. Not one more lie. I have a feeling that Brandon looked through my phone the night before. During the course of the movie, I slept off on the couch. I was surprised to see that my phone was sitting on the coffee table when I woke up, rather than in my pocket, where I always keep it. It was displayed on the passcode screen that there had been unsuccessful tries. I questioned Brandon about it this morning, and he responded by becoming defensive and asking me why I would need to look at your phone unless there was something that I was trying to conceal. For the sole purpose of throwing him off, I had a massive fight and informed him that he was being overly paranoid. In order to avoid having to confront him, I stormed out of the room and spent 3 hours at the shopping mall. I went out and caught up with Caleb for a cup of coffee while I was out. Despite the fact that I had been creating excuses for him for several months, he continued to inquire about when he could visit my new apartment. In the end, I gave an and stated that perhaps it would be this coming Friday when my roommate is off-site. To tell the truth, despite the fact that Brandon will be at home, I decided to cross the bridge when I finally arrived at it. I awoke this morning to find 16 texts from Caleb waiting for me. It is his insistence that he come over on Friday, and he claims that he has something very essential to convey to me in person. Despite the fact that I have a troubling feeling about this, I am unable to tell him the truth at this time. In his mind, I have been living on my own for the entirety of this period. Brandon does not even exist in his mind. After dinner tonight, Brandon would like to have a serious conversation with you. Concerning the meaning of that, my thoughts are racing. To what extent is he going to expel me? So you want me to start paying the rent? Make a proposition? Oh God, I pray that it is not the very last one. It is not time for me to have that conversation. It is not possible for me to choose between him and Caleb at this point. My expectations were not met by the serious conversation. Brandon did not want to know if I was content with him, but he did mention that I had been acting distant recently. I put on my best girlfriend performance, embraced him, assured him that I was happy, and kissed him until he stopped asking questions. I finally got him to stop asking questions. For the time being, the crisis has been avoided. On the other hand, Friday arrived. I had been so certain that I had everything sorted out until the day that everything went apart. Brandon sent a message stating that he will be working late due to an inventory-related matter. The timing was perfect. Around 7 o'clock, I informed Caleb that he could finally come visit my apartment. I even went out and purchased some candles and champagne in order to make it a more memorable occasion. Surely, I could fool myself into thinking that this was genuinely my flat for a couple of hours. Just as I was getting ready to set up at 6:45, I was feeling quite brilliant about how I had brought everything together. That's when I heard Brandon's key turning in the lock. My heart stopped stopping completely. When he arrived, he reported that they had completed their work ahead of schedule. There was a tap at the door before I had even had a chance to think about what direction to go. Brandon appeared to be perplexed. "Who are you anticipating to arrive?" I was unable to respond. All of the saliva in my mouth evaporated. This time, the knock is even more audible. "A Vicky? Do you intend to receive that?" While Brandon was making his way to the bedroom to change, he inquired. My head was going in circles. I was just given a few seconds to make a decision. Tell Caleb to leave him alone. make it seem like it was a delivery. It was, however, too late. Since Brandon is such a kind and considerate person, he opened the door for himself. I will never forget the expression that appeared on Caleb's face when he became aware that Brandon was standing there. Confusion followed by astonishment, and then this horrifying conclusion to come. Just who are you? While his voice was shaking, he asked. Brandon turned his head to gaze at me, displaying the same level of perplexity. Brandon is Vicky's boyfriend. I am Brandon Dot. Just who are you? And at that moment, everything went off the rails. While he was inside the flat, Caleb pushed his way past Brandon and looked around excitedly. Do you have a boyfriend? It's been a few months since we started dating. Boyfriend Dot is our relationship that we have. I've been attempting to visit your apartment for weeks, and now I've learned that you're living with another man. What gives? For the first time in my life, I saw Brandon's face transform from one of bewilderment to one of icy cold rage. Vicky, what exactly is he talking about today? I made an effort to appear innocent and to give the impression that Caleb was just a crazy ex-boyfriend who was unable to let go of his past thought. It is of no consequence. Brandon, all he is an ex-boyfriend who continues to harass me. Do you remember that I told you about him? Caleb appeared as though I had knocked him out. Is it? This morning, we were communicating by text. The previous week, he told me that you loved me. With his arms crossed and his gaze fixed on me, Brandon gave me a look that caused my stomach to involuntarily plummet. Was told that you did not have any former partners in your life and that your most recent romantic partnership occurred more than a year ago. According to her, she lived by herself. Caleb yelled out, she has been inviting me over for weeks, but she always cancels at the last minute. As they waited for an explanation, both of them then turned to face me. I was desperately trying to find a way out of this situation, but for once I had nothing, no apology, no narrative to tell. All I had was the unpleasant reality that was hanging in the air between us. I am able to explain, and I did begin, but even I was unsure of what was going to come out of my mouth next. The relationship between Caleb and I never ended in an official sense. Nonetheless, after I met Brandon, things just happened. Have things simply taken place? The voice of Caleb was crinkly. Have you been unfaithful to me for a number of months, by his side? The flat that you pretended to be yours, but was actually his? The look on Brandon's face changed from one of fury to one of disdain. Every single night that you have been here with me, every single time that you have stated that you were looking for a job or going to see your mother, you have been with him? I could feel tears falling down on me, and they were genuine tears, not the phony ones that I typically use to get what I want. It was not my intention for this to take place. I was going to inform you both, but I just couldn't figure out how to do it. Caleb looked at Brandon, and then he looked back at me. Doc, how long have you been located at this location? How about 3 months? The response came from Brandon before I could. As soon as she moved in, she claimed that her mother had kicked her out. The chuckle that Caleb let out was a terrible, senseless one. She informed me that she got her own place 3 months ago, and she said that her job granted her promotion. That is interesting because she told me that. Is it a job? The tone of Brandon's voice was eerily absent. A week after she moved into this location, she decided to resign from her work. I have been providing her with unwavering support. They were both staring at me, comparing notes, and coming to the realization that everything I had told them was a lie. The room gave off the impression that it was spinning rapidly. Caleb appeared to be so enraged that I had a fleeting second of thought that he might actually hit me as an alternative. He simply shook his head. As he moved toward the exit, he remarked, "You are absolutely unbelievable." To be honest, it's unbelievable Dot did not get in touch with me ever again. When he finally left, he slammed the door so forcefully that the portraits that were hanging on the wall shook. I went to Brandon, prepared to make an attempt to explain, to beg, and to do whatever it was that I needed to do in order to save the situation. However, the expression on his face halted me in my tracks. Never before have I seen someone appear to be so betrayed. My voice hushed as I pleaded with Brandon. I apologize, and I will explain everything to you. He only extended his hand forward. Not at all. After that, he entered the bedroom and shut the door while he was there. During that particular night, I attempted to sleep on the couch. Brandon refused to engage in conversation with me and would not even look at me. I continued to knock on the door of the bedroom, pleading with him to let me explain, but he simply instructed me to ignore him and leave him alone. It has been a while since I shed genuine tears, but I remember crying for the first time in a rallying. It's not the phony crying I do to get what I want. It's the real crying I do when I've realized I've messed up something that may have been nice. When I awoke the following morning, Brandon was standing over me with his phone in his hand. He appeared to have not slept at all. His voice was unruffled as he said, "Your boyfriend sent me a message." The pit of my stomach sank. My dear Brandon. He is not my ... It should be saved. I was interrupted by him. It was revealed that he had a lot to say. For example, you told him that you were working as a manager at that boutique business, despite the fact that you had left that position several months earlier. You have been receiving money from him for rent on an apartment that does not exist, or you have been taking money from him. I was no longer able to deny it. It was right there where the evidence was. Even though I was attempting to appear as sad as possible, I conceded that I had made some blunders. I did not understand. I had no idea what it was that I craved. Brandon had just laughed, but it was not the warm laugh he usually gives, but rather something icy and acrid. You were completely aware of what it was that you desired. Free housing from me, money from him, the ease of having a reliable lover, and the thrill of whatever he was to you are all things that you would receive from him. Brandon, if you please. Even though I made a mistake, I still care deeply for you. Can you tell me where I should go? You know how terrible things are at my mother's house, and I can't go back there. It was only for a split second that I believed I had a glimpse of the old Brandon. It was the person who could not bear to see anyone else in pain, and who had come to my rescue when I had nowhere else to go. However, his expression became more resolute. Vicky, that is no longer a problem for me because you have picked your own path. It is now your turn to cohabit with them. After that, he vanished. Once more into the bedroom. A sound of drawers opening and closing was heard. He had a cardboard box in his possession when he emerged from the building. He began collecting my belongings from various locations about the living room. Chargers, hair products, and my cosmetics. That was sitting on the counter in the bathroom, as well as clothes that I had left on the floor. What exactly are you doing? As the urge to panic grew in my throat, I asked, "Can you describe its appearance? You were going to leave. At this moment, right now, I told you that you would not be serious." At the same time as he was throwing my items into the box, I followed him about. "Sunday has arrived, Brandon. Can you tell me where I should go? All I ask is that you allow me a week to find out what I need to do." He came to a halt and tilted his head to look at me directly. You know what makes me laugh? Almost precisely the same thing was said by your ex-partner when I inquired about the length of time you had been seeing both of us. We had been dating for about a week at that point. According to what he said, you have been dishonest with me throughout the entirety of our relationship. I said, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Errors are made by individuals. Vicky, this was not an error on your part. A mistake is when you neglect to pay a bill or when you say something without giving it much consideration when you are furious. This is a calculated result. Every single day, every single lie, and every single time you went from his arms to mine, you made that decision, repeatedly and without fail." The tears began to flow once again, and I sank back down into the couch. "Beg you, try not to do this. I beg you." There is nowhere else for me to go. My remaining belongings were crammed into the box by Brandon, who then placed it close to the entrance. 1 hour is all you have to gather whatever else is yours and then leave the building. It is tomorrow that I will change the locks. He reached into his wallet and produced two $20 which he then discarded on the coffee table. A motel room for tonight ought to be covered by that. It makes no difference to me what you do after that. After an hour had passed, I found myself standing on the pavement in front of Brandon's apartment building with a duffel bag slung over my shoulder and a cardboard box at my feet. Everything that I possessed anywhere in the globe. There were heavy gray clouds in the sky, warning of impending rain. The sky was getting darker. Just what I needed for my dramatic farewell, don't you think? My former coworker from Trendy Treasures, Megan, was the one I tried out. Despite the fact that we were never very close, Mom was always kind to me. I made a phone call, and unlike every other miracle, she answered. This is the condensed version that I gave to her. My boyfriend kicked me out of the house, leaving me with nowhere to go for a few days while I figure out what's going on. After a moment of hesitation, she continued, "I have a pull-out couch. For a night or two, you are more than welcome to crash here, even though it is not much." After one night, it was already 5. Despite the fact that Megan was kind enough to refrain from asking an excessive amount of questions, I could see that she was waiting for me to either get a job or make alternative arrangements. By the 3rd day, I was beginning to feel hopeless. Because of my employment history, my tendency to quit without giving notice, and the fact that I did not have any references, I had applied to every retail establishment in the mall. Nevertheless, no one was contacting me back. Megan brought up the possibility that it could be time for me to check out a women's shelter on the 6th day of my stay. According to her, they offer resources, including people who can assist you in getting back on your feet, job placement, and possibly even assistance with housing. I experienced a bodily ailment whenever I thought of being in hiding. My life was not supposed to be like that at all. In a moment of weakness that evening, after Megan had gone to bed, I took the initiative to send Brandon a text message. I'm sorry for everything. There are no allegations and there are no dramatics involved. I made a terrible mistake. There is nowhere else for me to go. Almost quickly, I observed the status of the communication change from delivered to read. There were 3 dots that emerged, then vanished, then reappeared, and finally, there was nothing. There was no reaction. Following that, I gave Caleb a shot, swallowing any remaining dignity I might have had. I am aware that you despise me at this very moment, but I am in a difficult situation. Is it possible for us to talk? It was not long before he responded. You are now ready to lie down in your own bed. Never get in touch with me again. Megan arranged for me to sit down at her teeny tiny kitchen table the following morning. The lease I have does not permit long-term guests, Vicky, and I'm sorry to have to tell you this. While you were arriving and going, my landlord observed you, and he is now asking questions. You need to locate an alternative location before tomorrow. I gave a neutral nod. It is clear to me. We are grateful for everything. On that particular evening, which was my final night at Magish, I compiled a list of all the errors that I had committed, beginning with the fact that I had lied to Brandon from the very beginning, continuing to meet Caleb behind his back, stealing money from both of them, and quitting my job without having another one lined up. On the other hand, while I continued to stare at the list, an odd occurrence took place. I started coming up with reasons to justify each thing. Having to move in with Brandon was not really my fault. I was forced to do so. Due of my mother's addiction, our home had become poisonous. My decision to leave my employment was not my responsibility. I had a difficult time cooperating with my manager. Once I had finished my attempt at rationalization, I had successfully persuaded myself that I was just as much of a victim as everyone else in this narrative. Is it even more so? It is important to remember that Brandon and Caleb still had a roof over their heads. What was it that I had? The next day, I discovered that I was once again in the vicinity of Brandon's apartment building, standing on the opposite side of the street. I looked up at his window. The lights were turned on. He was at home, most likely playing his silly computer game and eating takeout, and he was doing just fine without me having to be there. A gentle rain began to fall when I was in a position where I was literally homeless. This would be the scene that would play out in a movie. The guy looks out his window, sees the girl he loves standing in the rain, and then rushes down to take her into his arms. I got out my phone and dialed his number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I immediately hung up. I hung up and then called the number more times. After 5 attempts, he finally responded. Vicky, what is it that you want? He spoke in a chilly and aloof manner. As I spoke, my voice broke and I said, I'm outside. Just talk to me, Brandon, please. I'm waiting. Take 5 minutes. There was a significant lull in the conversation. No, I am unable to leave the house. It didn't matter to me who heard me yelling at this point. It is now raining. I am currently standing here with everything that I own being destroyed. You can't spare 5 minutes after everything that we've endured, can you? In reality, we did not possess anything, he said in a low voice. All of it was constructed on lies. That is not the case. I was crying ugly, snotty tears, the kind of crying that no one looks cute doing. I was crying now. The love I had for you has not diminished. Instead, Vicky, you adored what I was able to provide for you. There is a contrasting aspect. It was a sigh. Never give me another call. When the line was cut off, I looked up at his window after staring at my phone in a state of astonishment for a while. There was a twitch in the curtain. His eyes were fixed on mine. Something snapped inside of me, and I could feel it occurring. Pure wrath was the result of all the suffering, fear, and desperation that had been building up. I immediately began yelling every insult that came to my mind, directing all of my expressions toward his window. In order to avoid me, people who were walking by crossed over to the opposite side of the street. It didn't matter to me. I let out a shrill scream, my voice breaking as I screamed out in shock. I will never get over you. However, even as the words entered my tongue, I was aware that they were not accurate. This had not been done to me by him. The act had been committed by me. At this very time, I was standing in the rain, yelling at the window of an apartment building like a crazed person. Every lie, every deception, and every selfish action had brought me to this point. After some while, I was unable to continue. In addition to the fact that my neck was hurting, my eyes were swollen from sobbing, my clothing were drenched through, and Brandon's curtains were still left closed. He was not going to come down. Neither of us were going to go back. It was no longer possible. After picking up what was left of my wet cardboard box, I started walking down the street without any particular goal in mind. a short distance away from that location, away from the proof of my shortcomings. It was when I was walking that I began working on my story, the account that I would give to the next person who came by and promised to assist me in any way they could, the version in which I turned out to be the victim of unfortunate circumstances, harsh men, and poor luck. That version in which I was not responsible for any of this. I was in a new city with a new boyfriend 2 weeks after. I had moved there first. It's Jacob. I was picked up by him at a bus station. He had purchased dinner for me, he had listened to my sob tale, and he had offered me his couch till I started to get back on my feet. Does this sound familiar to you? Despite the fact that the cycle was starting all over again, I promised myself that this time I would be more intelligent and cautious, and that I would avoid being caught. There are some persons who never acquire knowledge. I suppose that I am one of them.